thought about how you could use your unique skills to benefit an organization in a remote location, for example, a hotel in the middle of Africa? Well, that's exactly what Gerrit Jessen did, the Director Germany of the Event Design Collective. He started his career in hotels working under Kempinski, Hilton, Intercontinental and Steigenberger, and he went on to start his own boutique event agency called P-Concept in Berlin. He then sold that to the MCI Group, and Gerrit went on to become the leader of Germany, Austria and the Czech Republic for the organization. And since 2017, Gerrit has been leading the Event Design Collective in Germany and training event designers all over the world. But recently, Gerrit joined the Senior Expert Service as a volunteer to help improve the running of a remote hotel in Nebbi in the West Nile region of Uganda. Now, in this episode, Gerrit shares some amazing stories about running events in Berlin before and just after the Berlin Wall came down. He talks about the power of volunteering through organizations like MPI, but also in this specific case, volunteering in rural Africa. Specifically to this experience, he talks about the power of stepping completely outside your bubble. He talks about going back to the basics, understanding the real needs of the stakeholders. Finally, we zoom out and we talk a little bit about event design. Gerrit feels that there is a big need for events to try different approaches and take more risks. And we also talk about concepts to improve networking at events. I hope you enjoy this podcast, and I invite you to check out the other episodes of the Skift Meeting podcast, which are available on any major podcast provider. Thanks for listening. Hello, everybody. Delighted to have a special guest today on the Skift Meetings podcast, Gerrit Jessen, the Director Germany of the Event Design Collective. Gerrit, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Miguel. Thanks for having me.
Gerrit, we've known each other for a number of years, but I want to make sure to start by giving people context about who you are and why your opinion really matters, I think is the most important way to look at it. But I want you to take us back to the start of your career, and if you will, the moment where you discovered events, where you discovered business events in particular. Do you remember when that was?
Yeah, that was, I think, in the early 90s or late 80s when I came back from the US. I basically started in hotel business. So I went through the corridors of food and beverage up until I was assistant director of food and beverage in the US for a year and a half. Did the summer courses at Cornell, and then went back to Berlin only 1 month before actually the wall came down. So that was in October of '89. And I started as convention service director. So that was the first time when I professionally from the hotel side was responsible of the then largest convention hotel in Berlin. And that was the first time I actually was responsible for major events for that matter.
Very interesting. So you said you are from Germany, from Berlin, West Berlin at that point, I would imagine, right? And you're flying over to the States, seeing this different world. What was that like? I mean, was it already quite a difference? Was it more than today, or was it very different?
No, it was. I'm born in Hamburg, and I started my career. But you're right. I started my career in Berlin, and it was. Yeah, it was pretty different when I left '88 for the US to actually do my Cornell studies. I was totally amazed that in the evenings, from an IT perspective, at Cornell University, they had a room that from today, it was like huge with about 100 Apple computers. 100, at that time, '88, I was like, oh my God. And for every second, they had a printer. And that was like Jesus, and you could access that 24/7. So yes, I was pretty amazed also from the ways, and coming back to events, the way that information was transferred there, the way they taught. There were always two professors in the classes, so that was very high level for me, also from a learning side.
And then you came back. You had this amazing experience with the Berlin Wall coming down, etc. And then. When did you leave the hotel business? Because then you started your own company, I believe, right?
Exactly. That was like after 2 years. You can obviously imagine that hell broke loose when the wall came down. The stories, the corporate stories, taglines like, breaking down walls, overcoming barriers, up to new frontiers, was like every corporate meeting had to happen in Berlin all of a sudden. But there were very limited capacity. And as we actually had the largest ballroom, We were just trying to make triple bookings into double bookings, and we were already happy. So it was a bit of a burnout situation after 2 years, when one evening I sat together with my then colleague and said, let's just, it's time that we start kicking ass. Okay, let's just self-employ, let's just open up an agency, let's just turn sides. So we, in fact, what today you would call a startup, we just got together, rented like a teeny weeny little office in the east of Berlin at that time, because that you got some funding, and we started up a DMC at that time, which I then ran for 16 years. For the better part. So I always say I've got 10 years hotel, 16 years small agency. Then I sold my business to MCI, which is like a large global agency. And I ran MCI Germany for 10 years. So that's my 10 years of large agency. And after that, I joined the Event Design Collective.
Okay. And tell us, what is the Event Design Collective? We've had Ruud on the show before, but from your view, could you explain it?
Yeah. It was like very interesting. When they actually wrote the book, that was like in 2012 or so. I was together with them on the MPI board, and at the evenings, whatever, they were drawing me some sketches like, do you get this or whatever, and we're planning this, and how do you like that? So I got involved in the very early stages. And then when I left MCI, they were like, you know what, why don't you care to join us and be responsible for the German-speaking parts of the world? And I was like, yeah, that sounds great, because that's an extension. Because obviously in my agency world, I was very much onto the how, when, what, who. And this was all about the why are we doing events, and what should come out at the end. So for me, also from an intellectual perspective, that was like, yeah, let's expand on that. Let's join them.
Interesting. And so you teach or you train on event design in Germany, but really all over the world, right?
Exactly. I basically now, I learned it. That was interesting, but I learned all of it in English. I did my certified event designer 2017 in San Diego. So I had to sort of rethink all of that into German, which was also kind of an interesting experience. But then as I've learned all of the context in English, I now teach, train, and consult also in English. And it's basically about helping organizations design events that matter using a methodology, and the event canvas methodology. That's basically what it is about.
Yeah. And do you find that doing the German version of this, does it have limitations, or are there things that are really hard to kind of get to in a German kind of language context?
In the language context, that was also, yeah, because obviously the English language is much more, you can have a one word that explains it all, where in Germany you probably need 3 words. So it doesn't sound that sexy, and doesn't sound that catching if you want to translate it word by word. So that's the one thing. And then on the other side is it's a canvas design thinking based methodology. And a lot of times I feel Germany is still the mother country of engineers. You know, it's more like the on-off and the Excel sheet-based decision-making process. So that's also a challenge into bringing people to actually challenge the status quo and ask the why and let themselves go in terms of let's just start from a blank paper, because a canvas is for a lot of people is scaringly blank.
That's an interesting way to put it, kind of that open-endedness of it.
Yeah.
Wanted to go back to your time as a DMC. I mean, you must have run hundreds of events, and even with MCI, right? But I think on your own company, that was much more hands-on in a way. What event or events would you highlight? You know, like if you're at a dinner party and you want to tell a great story about a unique event that you did, what comes to mind?
Well, they were obviously in the wild years right after the wall came down. One of the first events that we did was actually at the site of the Potsdam Conference in Sicilian of Castle. You know, where Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill met to decide about the post-war area, and in that very room we actually had a corporate conference, which today, nobody would ever allow that. But in that early days, it was like, okay, there's somebody who put a lot of money in this. It was and it was a tobacco company. We did that for. So no, also from a compliance, whatever. It was like, so we actually had this table of where they had the conferences table taking out, and obviously you had all carpet put in there. So we were all very respectful with the room as such. But in today's, it was a museum still at that time. So actually being able to do that at such a location, that was certainly a one-off, and it never happened to me again. And the other one was when we had the Football World Cup in 2006. That was probably the most expensive event that we did. We did the Mastercard's final evening with Pelé and Beckenbauer and all the football hotshots in the German Historic Museum. So these were like two events where you say, okay, now what's next? And that was obviously also for me then an idea to say, we need to change something. Also in my career, and this is when serendipitously, but it came. I then joined MCI, which basically brought obviously my experience of agency to another level.
Absolutely. And then in your MCI days, are there any events from that period that stick out as something quite different? I mean, I guess you were managing lots of different teams, etc., but you must be aware of some of the more interesting events that happened.
It was in a lot of times it was magnitude, because MCI at that time was already one of the leading global agencies. So it was brands that in my small DMC world I didn't even dare to think about working for. So we did major events for SAP and other top shots and large events. And I think that for me was having a team that was actually able to do that and getting this positive feedback of the clients, that how we actually added value to them, because the larger companies at that time, they were already asking a lot of the why, so from the HG perspective on an MCI level, you were very much into value add versus organizing, whereas a DMC, you are basically, you're executing. So that was that was sort of for the main idea is the magnitude of the events that we did.
Super interesting. Now take us to the Event Design Collective and the Event Design Canvas. You're helping others create events, design events. Have you witnessed any events that you helped kind of design on the board, on the canvas, and then you saw them, or at least heard of them coming to life? Any that really impressed you?
Yeah, I think the one where I was involved and also as a participant was the MPI European Conference in The Hague in 2019, where the Netherlands chapter actually took over organizing that event for MPI Global. And they basically got together 60 volunteers, which you can imagine, if you have 60 people that want to put in their time, you need to organize them, okay? And I think they did that very well in various sessions, using the Canvas methodology, defining who are our main stakeholders, how can we make them happy, how do we define stakeholder happiness through all levels, from the organizers to the different groups of participants, and then how do we actually design the experiences and the learning to get that desired outcome. And that, I think, is for me is an example, and we have a very good case study on the website, is an example, like just one thing, which I have not seen after that yet, is people were actually collected from the airport in cars, in private cars, from part of the 60 organizing people. So you were like, all of a sudden you were like, it was like coming home to a family, when you arrive at an airport, then your family picks you up and you don't go to a bus and then you go to wherever. So that was the one thing. Plus, I think networking was not left to serendipity. Like one tiny little idea, you could only get food at the food stands at the reception if you come up to the food stand with 3 people you didn't know before. And then as a team, as a little group, and then as a mini community, you will then basically help. You could order your food. So it was not expensive, but it was just the idea and the experience that, that's 5 years ago now, which still stays in my mind.
Super interesting. So we talked through your career. I think it was kind of interesting to jump through different events as well through your career. But you've always been a leader, and I wanted to get your kind of take on leadership and how you got to be a leader so quickly and kind of stay there, and what you advise others that want to have a seat at the boardroom table. How do you get there? What's your advice for people that want to kind of achieve that?
I think you need, after the 3R, you need to invest to be involved, to be invited, right? So you need to invest to be involved, to be invited. So you need to invest time initially, because it's, as you said, it's volunteer work. Nobody's going to pay you. I never ever got paid for being on a board. But in order, if you want to change things, and if you're not happy with the industry you're in or the surroundings that you face or whatever, at least my take was get involved in industry associations. And I did that on a local level. I was instrumental in founding the Berlin preferred agencies almost over 20 years ago. I was for 10 years on the German Convention Bureau. So that was my national take. And I joined MPI in 1999, and it was, I think, on the international. First, I was on the Germany board, then was on the international board for quite some years. So that was on the global level. So and it's a huge investment, but also what you get out of it is what you just said. It's recognition. And you get also business out of it. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, no, I'd rather do sales, whatever." I said, no. If you do sales, you need to talk to people, you need to understand people, and then people will remember you, and then they will come back to you.
Interesting. So you're saying a lot of your success, corporate success, in many ways, you can link that to your volunteer and your kind of association participation.
Absolutely. I knew many of the MCI people through MPI, because obviously also Roger Tondeur at that time believed very heavily in industry associations, and MCI was also involved. So when they thought about, okay, so we are now looking into expanding in Germany, whose name would pop up there. Then my then agency colleague who ran another agency, Gunnar Stickan, one day called me and said, I joined MCI, and I should ask you, or I would like to ask you, well, she put it that way. Do you know somebody? She was very diplomatic. Do you know somebody who would also, maybe put the corporate helmet on in this venture? And I said, yeah, let me think about it. So I threw my hat in the ring. But that was also because I sort of also had manifested of who I am into involving myself on a volunteer basis.
Yeah, fascinating. I think that is a perfect advert for MPI if they needed one. So a good example of that building that international network through association and through getting involved, right?
And I'm absolutely with you, but it's like it's work. This is why it's called network. Yeah. Okay. So you need to actually, and it also, it's not for everybody. You need to be willing to do that. You need to be willing to walk up to strangers. You need to be willing to actually take the lead when it's offered to you, and there's risk involved, right? And it hasn't been like always a silk smooth ride, like if you're in a board with other people, there's obviously characters coming towards each other. So, but it's also, it helps you to position yourself within a group of leaders. If you say, look, now I want to be the chairman, or I want to be the president, or what have you. And I can just say it's worth it. This is what I'm saying.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I want to shift over now to, well, I think the main reason why we wanted to have this conversation, which is another type of volunteering, another kind of volunteering effort, a very different type of volunteering that you were just involved. So I know that you are involved with the Senior Expert Service on a pro bono mission to a hotel called Satellite One Hotel in Nebbi in the West Nile region of Uganda. And that is as much as I know. I know a little bit about this story, but could you just give us some context of what this is and how this came about?
Yeah. And first of all, let me say it is as remote as it sounds, right? So usually what I knew before of Uganda was Kampala and gorillas. I'm very open with that. I've never been to East Africa before.
Mm-hmm.
And the Senior Expert Service is an organization funded by the German government. It's basically an NGO where you can list yourself as a German expert with your area of expertise. They put you in a database, and then organizations in any country who can then pitch projects where they say, we think that we need a German expert in order to help us to propel our organization to whatever next level. And that can be from all areas. There can be a doctor to an eye clinic in Nicaragua to whatever, a baker to go to somewhere in Africa to help them bake bread, whatever. So they need to pitch that. Then it's evaluated, and then they try to match up with the database. And then one day, you get a call, and I was listed with my expertise in event design and hotel management. And I got this call about a year ago where they said, we have this request here from a hotel in Uganda. Would you like to go to Uganda? And I said, yeah, sure. Tell me more. So that was the thing. And I was actually, why did I enlist? Because my wife 5 years ago enlisted, and she went to Jakarta and basically helped a vocational school, helped to train their professors on also event design and sustainability. So I was like, yeah, let me also try to do that. So this is why I said, yeah. And it's, as I said, it's strictly pro bono. You get a per diem, and they pay you travel expenses.
Yeah.
And
they get you there, right? They get you there because that's quite an adventure.
Exactly. And no, it was not Kampala, which is like, you just fly. Kampala is like whatever major global metropolis. No, I flew actually to Kampala, and then I took another 3-hour Cessna airplane with an NGO airline. And then I took another 90-minute car ride. And then I'm there at Nebbi, which is like a 30,000 people community, 30 kilometers off the border to Sudan. It's so remote, very, very remote. And the only guests there were primarily NGO, obviously employees who worked there. And the pitch was, we want to know more about international hotel standards. That was basically in a nutshell. And I'm like, okay, my hotel knowledge is quite old. I've got 10 years, but I'm not to the top notch. What's the most recent whatever IT solution in hotel market? But I felt, hey, it was a 20-room hotel. Mm-hmm. With 26 employees in that area. I thought that, hey, I can help them. So I have the global picture of how a hotel should run, because obviously during my career I've stayed at I don't know how many 100 room nights in different types of hotels. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I arrived there, that was quite in the evening. I was picked up in a taxi with the director actually picked me up. And those 90 minutes that we drove from this little airport or airfield, as they are called, there's no more airports, there are airfields, mm-hmm. To Nebbi, it was a 17-kilometer car ride, which took us 90 minutes. So you can halfway and think, how the roads were like dreadful. And for you and I, it probably would have taken us 3 hours because the taxi driver has been driving this road up and down every day. So he knew every pothole by name. So he was all of a sudden he was speeding up to 120, and we're like, no, 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 man, the next pothole. And then he was like 30 minutes before he was pushing in the brakes and make a slight left turn, and then he was speeding on. So he knew it exactly.
Wow. And so what is this? So the city, Nebbi, town, city, what is it? What's there? It's a small.
It's the municipal center. So the regional, it's the Western Nile region. It's part of the Western Nile region. It was the municipal capital of the Western Nile region. So they had a hospital. Okay. So and then obviously the municipal government was there, and like a huge police station, and then the market. So it was a picture perfect, basically, sort of as me with my European brain, what like as an small African town you have in your head. This was exactly like it looked. But from European standards, it was probably a 2-star hotel. From the local standards, it was the Adlon of Nebbi, right? Because there was not much on top of it, and they had the highest rate. It was a family-run hotel. Mm-hmm. They had another upscale hotel in the directly at the White Nile, but this was like a business style hotel, and it was like I felt I could really. I was only there for 15 days, right? It was a 3 weeks assignment, mm-hmm. And the thing is, it from what I felt is like, and this was also in hindsight, you have to put yourself outside of your bubble at times totally, and that was for me. I was like. I said yes before I knew I was letting myself into, right? Because I was probably the only white person in this 30,000 people town, which the first 2-3 days you're like, okay. And as I told you that in an earlier conversation, is that from this black and white thing, you like, if you see white people all day, you think the world is white. If you see black people all day, the world is black. And there's nothing wrong with it. It was like in the morning was like totally okay. However, obviously from their side, I was still the white guy. And I was like, yeah. And that was my pitch initially. I said, I'm not the white guy here to tell you how life runs and how you should run your business. Okay, I can only give you my tiny, also little narrow perspective of how I see life and how I feel international hotel standards should be, whether or not that is applicable in your organization, in your culture, in your ways of thinking and working. I totally leave that up to you, and that's it. That was also very necessary, because a lot of times. You just drop in there, like and then do this, do that, and then you leave. And I also said that to them. I'm gone after 15 days, whether or not, and what you do with what I think could be improved or not. Again, that's up to you. And it was. I expected basically. What I got, because I had a call with the general manager before and with the owner before, so I pretty much knew. Obviously, they had a website, so I knew what I was letting myself into. And basically, from the standards, they were in the from the management standards and from the IT standards, they were probably in the late 70s, early 80s of last century. Okay.
Which break that down for us. What does that really mean?
That means that it was no IT.
Okay. Right. Are we talking fax machines and copy machines?
Yeah, no, not exactly. It was just after fax. So they had the general manager had a laptop, probably 8 years old. Then the storekeeper had one, and the accountant had a desktop. But they were all not connected. So they were communicating over emails. They were sending each other Excel sheets, whatever, all time. But that was it. All the rest was totally manual. And the funny thing is, when I started in hotel business in the 80s, it was same thing. So I felt it back like Back to the Future, like, okay, so you can do a store request on paper. And you can do a check-in on paper. They had a book which was numbered, and then if Miguel Neves would check in, they would write down, and then it was like carbon copy. So you would get the top carbon copy, that would be your receipt, and then the night auditor would then, from the book, consolidate all the information on his night audit report, which then in the morning would be brought to the general manager, who would then put it in his Excel sheet, who would then send the Excel sheet over to the accountant, who would then put it in an accounting thing. So it worked, it worked. And initially I felt, okay, never change a running system, right? So
if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Exactly. But then I started to ask some of the why questions, so why is the pricing of the menu the way it is? Do you have a food cost? Do you have a beverage cost? Or is it just because the competition also does it, whatever? And these were when I didn't get answers that I was satisfied with. So nobody knew what the food cost was. Nobody knew what the beverage cost was, what the average rate was, what the average occupancy was, like on a monthly basis. So all these data statistic, which today in a hotel is the basis of your future success, they were just, I feel they were running in the fog, and they were doing well. And I asked the owner, I said, "Are you happy with the returns of the hotel?" He said, "Yes." I said, "That's great, but do you think you can make more out of the hotel?" And he said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "See, but this is why I think you need statistics." And then I was trying in these 3 weeks to set up systems on a manual basis to at least know, so what's your average daily rate? And then we calculated the whole menu. I said, "Chef, you need to actually," there were like 30 items on the menu. And I said, "You need to cost them out." So that we then know how they work. And then there's, I taught them the system of menu engineering, which is you put all these menu items in a quadrant model, which obviously top right-hand corner is your top performers, which have a super low food cost and which are sold very well. These are your high performers, which you want to keep. But in order to know that, you need to know how many, chicken curries did you sell last month? And is chicken curry the food item that is the most profitable? So these are sort of basic things that today are all IT generated. And I was just trying to work out some Excel models, because if you then say, "Oh, you need to scrap all your ways of working, you need an IT. You need to spend 50,000 K, and then, there's tons of online IT available, hotel management software. But then 7 times a day, electricity is gone. Okay. So talking about wireless, talking about internet connection, talking about Miguel Neves wants to check in, and all of a sudden there's no internet, and then his machine doesn't work. So with that, there is some reasoning for doing it manually, if you are very much dependent on energy, which is not there at all times.
Not dependable. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that much about hotel systems, but just listening to the sharing of Excel spreadsheets over email, I get, scared, because it's like, at least work on one file somewhere, right? At least there's some sort of cloud system. There is internet, so they could, but yes, without reliable electricity, that sort of flies out the window, or at least you need to have some sort of backups, right?
That was my first idea. I just set up a cloud server, for crying out loud. And then, but then, if your cloud connection is gone 7 times a day, and then, yes, they had a solar backup system. So they actually had solar panels on the roof, and they had a diesel generator also. And then these machines were sort of, when the electricity broke down, sometimes were battling. So this is why neither of them would actually jump on. So that at night, that also aircon didn't work at night because these machines didn't work. So it's also the technical things of maintaining. Maintenance is also expensive, and then obviously the management system. Okay, where I said, you need let's work on a organigram, and let's define responsibilities, and who does what and who's responsible for what, and I try to basically sort of give a very basic information, because one morning I said, can I have a banana? No, they're in the storeroom. I said, yeah, well then get the key to the storeroom. No, the storekeeper took the key with him. I said, okay, so then get the second key, the backup key. Yeah, no, he also took the second key with him. Okay, so that was like, okay, I think we need to set up a system here, where this should not happen. So, but it was very rewarding, because I felt at least that I was trying to really give them help on the +1 level and not +10. It's like, these are European standards, or these are global standards, but you will never be able to actually apply them. But I said, very simple fact is like there was only one roll of toilet paper in each room, like the one on the roll. Okay. Yeah. And all over the world, somewhere in the bathroom, there's a second roll of toilet paper, right? For the reason that, for whatever reason, you need the full roll, and then you have a second roll. And it wasn't. So I said, can we make this a habit, like a rule, like a system? You always have a second rule. And they say, yeah, but no, they steal them. They steal the toilet paper. The guests steal the toilet paper. And that was like, okay, that doesn't happen in my part of the world. So this is what said, okay, I understand. And then one housemate said, okay, if somebody stays for 3 nights, and then the first night, the backup roll is gone. The second night, the backup roll is gone. I said, yeah, I'm with you. Then you don't put a roll in the third night, because obviously that person, for whatever reason, has a need to steal that toilet paper. But I said, can we, for the fact that some people will steal it, compromise on the standards that we have if we want to upscale the product that we have? And I said the answer should be no. So it's an additional cost for the owner to upscale the service to a level that is one up. But these are just sort of the realities I was facing in terms of, yeah, easy, make a change and put a second roll in there. And I'm like, so that was very, very interesting.
Yeah. And I think it's things like we were talking about the IT. You could suggest a new system or find some sort of cloud service that they could use, but then you also become the IT person then, right? And you're not going to be there afterwards. So you can't be there to manage that. It has to be something that can be sustainable after you leave.
Exactly. And I think at that time they were very into Excel. So I said, okay, let's do an Excel. Okay. So I was then I spent about 2 or 3 hours a day in my room and working on standards and on procedures and working on Excel and made myself fit again in working on Excel formulas and whatever, and working with that, which was also a great experience for me in helping them to improve the way they work. Because the storekeeper, he was very keen on actually doing that. He was probably the most Excel savvy. So I said, so how do you do your inventories? Well, we count the stock. I said, that's great. So yeah, no, he said, I count the stock. I said, you alone? Yes. I said, you shouldn't do that. You should do that together with the accountant, because otherwise, no mistrust against you, but you may make a mistake, and then, the store doesn't balance against your procurement and your issues. So these were all said, you should always do it with 2 people. Very simple things where they were very appreciative of, okay, yeah, no, makes sense, whatever. And I said, when do you order stock? He said, well, when it's empty. I said, yeah, but that, I don't know, that doesn't make sense. If you have 10 bottles of ketchup and then it's empty and it takes a week to buy new ketchup, then the operation is out of ketchup for a week. I said, you need to work on minimum and maximum stock. And then, the difference should be the time you need to actually replenish the stock. So these concepts, they were like, hey, yeah, that's cool. Let's do that. And that also for me was very rewarding because it sounds so basic, but in that system, in that operation, it really helped them to rethink the way they were working and using these new methodologies.
Fascinating. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. When you look back at the experience, what are you most proud of your work?
I think I was most proud of is I left actually what I one of the reasons I had was obviously hygiene. Hygiene is a big issue there. You know, you can forget all your sustainability, whatever. So hygiene means that there are basically no cockroaches or not as many cockroaches running around, and that the fridge is cleaned once a day. So these were the levels. Of course, in the stewarding area, which is like the back office area of the hotel, tons of stuff was just put on the floor, right? So and there was food and dirty cutlery and dishes from the service. Everything was put on the floor for the one reason, because there was no stainless steel table, which you could actually clean easily, whatever. So I made a drawing of, I think, what would fit there. I made a drawing, sent that to the owner. I said, you know what, you need to buy one of these tables. And in my world is you buy these things. And he was like, yeah, I have it made. I'm like, okay, have it made in my world means like it takes a year, right? You know, you buy it on Amazon Prime, it's there tomorrow, and if you have it made, that takes for ages. And it took longer than the time I was being there, but about 2 weeks later, he sent me a WhatsApp photo saying it's there. And actually, exactly what I said to the dimension, I said, so he actually had it made. So there's one physical legacy that I left is this table, which then separates the dirty dishes from the clean dishes, and just basically makes the operation run on a higher hygiene level. So that was my physical legacy. And the other one, I think, is as I just said, the systems where I said, I left Excel sheets where I said to the owner, with these, you will be at the forefront of capturing information. And then initially, because what happens in all the world is that eventually there will be a convention office, whatever, tourist office, whatever, and then they will start sharing information. But for that, obviously, you will need to that. So that I think was were the two things. So there was the physical legacy, and then by leaving the basis of capturing data.
No, really, really interesting. It kind of took me back to the kind of Maslow's triangle or pyramid of needs, right? That hygiene first one. Usually we talk about hygiene in event terms as more sort of basic physical needs, but in this case, it was a hygiene need. It was like, we need to make sure that the standards of hygiene are higher, right? And increase that. Really interesting. What about things that you would do differently? You know, if you were to do this experience again, would you change your approach in any way?
I would probably check more where I was staying, because initially they had planned me to stay in the staff house, which would have been 500 meters walking distance, which doesn't sound like nothing. But if you walk there over the streets at night, there's no light, whatever. So I didn't stay there. I stayed at the hotel, which obviously would have made or did make much more sense, because I could jump in, jump out very quickly and always go back to my room. So I would double check that. Am I staying at the property where I'll actually be working? So that would be one. And then what I did not know is that the owner would only be present for 4 days during the time I was there. And basically my main contact would be the general manager. Okay. And then obviously, as we all know, if you're the general manager and here comes this white a guy who knows it all, there might be some initial resentments of, and he was very amicable and we had a great relationship. But I would have probably said, if I invest my time and I travel all the way down, I would need you to be there all the time. So for me, to actually tell you, and then you tell them to do it, right? Because I was a bit of hung between two places, where I would tell the general manager, I don't really know what he was doing, and I felt now if I now tell the owner, then maybe the owner would get back to the general manager saying, "Oh well, you didn't do what Gerrit said," and he would get pissed off of me. So that was a bit of a the clear communication, as I said, which worked out in the end. But I think it could have been more efficient for the whole time. Yeah. In that respect, but in overall, I basically touch everything. We went through the website. We had a meeting with the web designer, and I said, "Your website is, I thought it was crap." I said, "You need to improve it." And so for me, that was the most rewarding thing, to actually help it. And I said, gather more information up front would probably what I would do for next time.
Fascinating. And last question about this project. Any next steps? Is this it? You've done your bit, you're out, or you're still sort of involved in any way?
No, it's like you get an exit interview with SES. You get an exit interview on site where people actually rate you. How was their experience? Did you actually help them towards their issue that they wanted to have solved? And then I'm still listed with the SES, and whatever. After this call, I may get another call, and they ask me, "Would you go to wherever?" No, I see this, and I met people from, and this is not only German associations, similar organizations exist all over the world. I met two Danish guys who work for a organization that also called whatever the Danish version of Senior Expert Service, and they were actually helping farmers there in that area who had problems, because a lot of, maybe that's a little side excursion, people are very poor there, so they cannot afford gas to heat. So they chop off the woods, make charcoal out of it, and then they sell it, and then they heat. So they basically tear down all the walls, which obviously means that the wind takes away all the fertile soil, and what is left is hard, non-fertile soil, which the farmers, obviously, you can also grow crop on there, but you have to use different crops. So these Danish guys were helping them to find the right crops, and how do you irrigate the water so that the water actually goes down to the plants, whatever. And they were 78 and 80. Okay. So I can do this for you can do this for a long time, as long as you're physically fit to travel and you like travel and your brain is halfway fit. So this is why I think for me that's the perfect way of connecting a challenge with experiences.
Yep. And are you still connected with the hotel? You said you got a WhatsApp message with the table. Is there still some communication?
Yeah. It's slower, right? Because obviously they are also basically geared back into and that's probably the only downside, is that 3 weeks is obviously is nothing, right? Yeah. So and that's obviously the downside of all kind of this aid, is how sustainable can it be in such a short time?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, Gerrit, thank you for sharing that experience with us. Fascinating. I really appreciate it. Want to zoom out a little bit and just get a couple of thoughts from you about the industry and kind of events in general. Do you have anything that keeps you up at night, that you're kind of concerned with as you look at the events industry right now?
Yeah, I have, and that's also maybe a bit more helicopter view. Is my one of my taglines is listen to understand, not to answer. I feel that with the ever shortened attention span that people have, like I just read an article, like if on TikTok within the first 3 seconds you don't say something that keeps people on it, then you're out, right? So how can you understand anything if you just swipe? And I feel that that trend also may jump over to live experiences. Okay, is how short can a session be in order for people to attend? And those deep dives, even a deep dive is probably no longer than 90 minutes. That's already a deep dive, right? We're like, no, a deep dive is like a full day. Okay, let's dive in. So that I think for the future, we could have like different sections, like whatever. Like I would really like to get together with a group in a conference for a full day, immersing myself in one topic, one issue, or one type of issues, where other people maybe say, you know, I'm happy with the 90-minute sessions. So actually acknowledging that and again doing an event design that that caters to these different needs, that I think we need to take care about in the future.
That's super interesting. It feels like conferences are only introduction sessions, or conference sessions are just about introductions and not about actually going deep. Is that then? Do you feel that like a training session is a whole different animal, but we should also have sort of training as part of conferences, if you will?
I feel it would help because with the training, you know, it comes down to what do people do after the event is if you just throw information in people's face without them doing something also on site, then I think you lose a lot. And I think scientifically it's proven that if you don't do things, or if they're not repeated over time after the experience, that after 3 weeks you lost like 70% of the knowledge, and like after 1 month basically 90% of the knowledge is gone. However, if you physically on site interact, touch and feel and share and discuss things, a lot more of that information stays in your brain, allowing you to change your behavior afterwards.
Absolutely. It all comes down to the event design, or the intentionality of the event design in many ways.
Yeah.
What about things that are fascinating to you, exciting, that you're seeing in the industry? What are you most excited about?
It's already probably like a negative buzzword is KI, but more in the sense of, again, from the focus of how will our industry use KI to spend more time on designing the desired outcome.
And KI
of events is AI. Yeah, sorry, this is the künstliche Intelligenz. Sorry, I was taking
the German version. Yeah, I thought that might be the KI.
Yeah. No, it's sorry, it's artificial intelligence. Exactly. Yeah. You know, how we'll be using it wisely to help it do all the commodity stuff, but then don't do more commodity stuff. But spend more time into the why, and let AI do the what, when, where, how, and how much.
Okay, so really kind of linking back to your concern in a sense, if we can have AI help us go deeper in a way, then that would be a great use of AI.
Absolutely.
And when you look at events, how they've evolved over the last few years, do you see events in the future being kind of different to what they are today? And I'm thinking 5 years, maybe 6 years, 2030. What will an event in 2030? How will that be different to today?
I think it will have a more professional 360 degrees on a timing scale. Okay, so basically be the live accumulation of a circle of information that during the year is online. I see that trending. You know, people start to actually go into event much earlier from the online phase, but it's still after the event you get a few questionnaires, and then you get a few more follow-up emails, but that's more like, okay, join us next year. But I think also the repurposing of the information, also from the idea of repeating, okay, because if you repeat again, that sinks in. So if let's say the sessions I've attended live on the conference, if I have the chance to, 2 months later, because I was, oh my God, how was that again? What did he say? I don't recall. If I can then actually look at that and it's indexed, so I can actually find what I was looking for, I think that at least my idea would give a much greater impact of live events if they repurpose that content.
I like it. So more holistic experience for the attendee, but also, or the participant, but also on behalf of the organizer, right? Sort of making that full circle of content, etc.
Yeah, and what we just discussed before is maybe have like a full deep dive, full day sessions versus smaller ones, and be more adventurous and daring. When was the last open space conference, Miguel, that you attended?
That's a good question.
Exactly,
Well,
same for me.
Yeah, we kind of go open space with our innovation lab at IMEX America. So we go very open-ended and have focused the session more on table discussions, but it's not a full unconference or something like that, which I think is what you're alluding to.
Yeah, exactly. That I think would be daring, which is like design is no design. Well, okay, there is a design, so there's a framework, but content-wise, there's nobody can make sure that there's a desired outcome. The outcome is solely designed by the participants. Yeah. And that I think, and that's a 50-year-old format. But it's still not used enough, I feel. And maybe that's also because nobody knows it. And if I say, oh, we open an open space conference, and then I want to attend, my question will be, so who's the keynote speaker? Well, there is none. Okay, no, I'm not going to attend a conference where there's no keynote speaker. And so what are the tracks? Well, there are none. It's basically that also this event organizers are afraid that participants are not giving a product that they can digest in order to hit that register button.
Yeah. Is it, do you think this is a marketing issue that's sort of the way we tend to register for something requires that information? Or do you think this is a sort of different stakeholder issue where, which I think to design one of these properly, you're sort of only focusing on one stakeholder, which is the participant. But then normally conferences depend on sponsors and hosts and all these kind of things. And their needs are harder to meet, I think, in one of these designs.
Absolutely. It requires a full new event design, as you said, also from the perspective. So maybe, I don't know, can a sponsor have one of these tables or, or are sponsors just part of the groups? And so you can actually, you're a sponsor and I'm a participant and we sit together at the table and then we have this conversation and as two human beings and not in these different, you want to sell me something, I need to buy something from you approach. As I said, it's a risk, and maybe we can start with that, like have a 3-day conference, have one day open space and the other one in a more traditional manner. But we need to try things out in order for people to understand the concept, so that if then eventually you will do a full open space, people like, yeah, I know the concept, let's just go for it.
Yeah, you need to build that trust, I think, and that helps with the marketing angle so that people can trust the organization or whoever is putting that on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fascinating. Gerrit, I think let's wrap up there. Really interesting conversation. Thank you for sharing your African adventure, your Ugandan adventure. I think that was fascinating. And your thoughts on event design and the event industry are always very welcome. Is there anything you'd like to cover before I get to the last question, which is the recommendation of a future guest?
No, I think it's basically all been said. I think we need to focus more on the why in the future, why we're doing events, in order to make it palatable for the event owners into spending budgets into live communications. And I think we're on the right track there in our industry. However, we're not there yet to really spend the big bucks on live events. So that I think would be one of my final words. Plus, we need curated networking in order to make events actually more valuable for participants, because there are a lot of socially shy people who have a lot to say, but we don't give them a forum. It's like we just put them in these network receptions where we all know each other, and these people then congregate in some bistro tables. And if they approach us, if I approach them, it's left to total serendipity. So that needs to be curated.
And to dwell on that a little bit further, do you have a preferred methods or techniques to make that happen?
The one, and that's very, very basic, is can somebody please get rid of lanyards? Okay. Can somebody please, I don't have a solution. Can somebody please somehow make sure that I get your name and who you work for or what is your special interest with the blink of an eye. Okay, so that I think is already very, very easy, not expensive. And I think Klaus Rasted also commented on that. You know, he was like, man, I'm so sick looking at the bellies of women or men for that matter, or whoever, in terms of who are you? Okay, so that would be the one thing. And then very simple things. I don't know, as a curated, if you stand in a queue for your next coffee, okay, it just need to be clear that it's okay to turn around and actually speak to the person behind you. Okay, but that needs to be upfront. Be like, don't leave it up to serendipity, because some people do that naturally. Some people are afraid. Okay, but make it a plan of your conference that's okay and it's wanted. Okay, so somewhat make it part of the event that's okay to do.
So you're saying no name badges, but make sure people feel comfortable to connect with others.
No name badges. Not no name badges, but no lanyards, because lanyards hang in front of your.
Okay, so bring the name badges up. So it's really
bring it up here. Make it in a 36 font. Okay, give me your first name and give me whatever, and then you can either give me your company name or give me what are you most interested in. Give me something.
Okay.
That give me the first thing. Oh, so you also like red sweaters? Yeah, I do also. I'm totally into red sweaters. Oh, we're already two. Oh, I met it. So whatever, however basic it may sound. And then over that one sort of commonality, you can then start exchanging ideas to save the world.
So it's that idea, write something or let us know something that you're fun or some hobby, something that's kind of interesting for somebody to ask you about. So it's asking me about.
Exactly. So what does that mean? Write something. You write, I don't, explorer. Okay. So what you exploring, Miguel? Okay. Oh, that's great. So something. Make it easy for people to make it easy and make it a ways of operation during an event to actually do that.
Interesting. Well, definitely something for word of advice for people listening. So there's some ideas there from Gerrit. Gerrit, last question for you is, can you recommend someone that we should interview on the Skift Meetings podcast as a guest?
Yeah, I would ask Felix Rondell of Future Hein, who I've known for quite a few years, who used to be the CEO of the Berlin Walls Foundation, and who also ran the Berlin Walls Conference for quite some year, and now is basically helping organizations at the intersection between science and societies to connect the dots. And he's a great personality, and he's also on the GCP Thought Leader panel. Mm-hmm. So I think he has a lot to say and a lot of interesting stuff probably for your audience.
Interesting. Thank you. I know Felix, he was he did some emceeing, I think, for the PCMA event in Copenhagen, right? So
yes,
he was there.
Yeah.
So Gerrit, thank you so much for your time, sharing your expertise, your thoughts with us. I appreciate it. For those listening, look up Gerrit and the Event Design Collective if you want to have more information. I hope you enjoy this episode and this conversation as much as I did. And thanks again.